Welcome back, friends and family at the internet. Welcome back to Starkey Farmstead, fellow watchers on the wall. Today's video, I want to talk about the elephant that is in the room. The elephant that so many people that have a problem with Candace Owens, they're not addressing it. A lot of us watched Candace Owens regularly when she was part of Daily Wire, part of TPUSA. And then something happened. What was that something? We're going to talk about that today because a lot of people have asked me questions concerning her relationship with George Farmer. But a lot of people don't understand is the sect of Catholic Church that Candace Owens was grafted into, sucked into this cult, has severely damaged, twisted the truth for her. And the reason it's so concerning is the influence that she has on millions of evangelical Christians. Excuse me. Some of us feel like Candace Owens is what we call controlled opposition. She is paid to play a narrative where she's going to expose something that needs to be exposed. She was once a liberal, and now she claims to be conservative. But the truth is, she's always been liberal, and she always will be liberal. Her job is to split the evangelical church vote, which is the biggest block of voters inside of the United States. That's factual. The biggest voting bloc is the evangelical church. And Satan needed someone to be welcomed into the evangelical corner to then sow confusion and dissent. Because I would have to say, right now in America, the biggest divider in Christian churches is what topic? Put it in comments. I want to know how many of you think the same way I do before I say it. The issue of Israel and the Jews. So we're going to start this video by discussing her husband, not her, because I am truly curious how many of you think maybe what has happened to Candace Owens is mainly to blame her husband. I have heard rumors, and it is a rumor, I cannot substantiate it, that Charlie Kirk was totally against her marrying her husband, George Farmer. He didn't like it. He didn't want her to do it. And I think now, hindsight being 2020 and all, that maybe he was on to something there, you guys. So yes, YouTube finally remonetized me. All glory to God. But if you'd like to get our monthly newsletter, look in the top of comments. Just make sure you put your email. This is George Farmer finally coming on to his wife's YouTube channel for people to meet. She asked this question to him. What is the biggest issue, I guess, with being married to Candace Owens? This is his response.
How long have we got? Well, I like to joke with you, and you know that I tell you this joke. So really, this is just for the audience, but I like to joke that there are many different women I'm married to because I'm never quite sure who I'm going to get in one day. So it's like someday I'm going to get one personality, and the next day it's this personality, and then you've got your investigative journalist hat on, and then you've got your mother's hat on, and then you've got your Catholic hat on. So there's a few hats that you're wearing at any one point in time. So it's always fun. I wouldn't say that's difficult. It's really just a joy of who you are as a person.
You're being kind. It's also been a tremendous challenge. And I think personally to you, because you're so different from the environment that you're now stuck into, which is to say,
yeah, that's true.
You are an Englishman. Yeah. You like to retreat, sort of read your texts, a quiet place with a cigar.
Mm-hmm. Yep, this is all correct.
This is all very correct. Yep. And then you marry this sort of loud American. You don't like taking pictures. You don't like being seen or photographed. And then you marry this loud American. And so you've really had to adjust, I think would be the correct word.
Yeah. It is the meeting of the two cultures is perfected in our marriage, I would say. Yeah. The bombastic Americanism versus the retired English persona has definitely been like fine-tuned. But I think that I love America. I mean, it goes without saying, but I love the American spirit and culture, and you obviously embody much of that. It's much more exciting in so many ways than.
Okay, so he says the quiet part out loud. Your multiple personalities make it hard, right? And they laugh it off. But there's an elephant in the room. See, George Farmer is Catholic. She was, Candace Owens, a conservative woman. She was raised conservative, but it was the type of conservative Christian that Candace Owens is. And we're going to get into that. See, she was of a type of Christian that was raised up Calvinist. In other words, to 100% support Israel and the Jewish people. Then she marries a man who is Catholic, but he's not just Catholic, because there are many good Catholics that love Jesus and, support Israel. But there is this divide in the Catholic Church that a lot of people don't know about. And if you really want to know what happened to Candace Owens, listen to this.
So clearly she has departed the Overton window, which means the discourse that she is expressing now is shocking people to the point people, even anti-Semites are going, whoa, that's way too far. But they go, whoa, that's like the Klans are going, that's insane. They wouldn't even know the Frankists or anything like that. But what people have missed is the theological background that just exploded in her own life. She was a Protestant. She held to what's called Reformed theology, which is kind of a Calvinism, which is fiercely anti-Roman Catholic. Her husband, George, is not just a Catholic. There are many wonderful Catholics who love Jews, who love Israel, who, Rudy Giuliani, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. These are all very religious Roman Catholics. But there is a iteration of Roman Catholicism, which is often called traditionalist, which sounds like traditional, but it really means something much more than that. And that's what her husband belongs to, and that's what she joined. The traditionalists believe that essentially all of the popes since Pius XII, Hitler's pope, were completely illegitimate.
I want to stop you guys right here. Do y'all remember when I did the video exposing the fact that a lot of what's been told to us about Hitler was a lie? The Jesuits backed Hitler. They funded that entire war. They also funded the Civil War in America, but that's another video. I just needed to bring that up to you guys, see if y'all remember that.
Just a little background. In 1958, Pope John the 23rd becomes the new Bishop of Rome. And as it turns out, he was perhaps the most pro-Jewish pope in history, one of them. He coordinates the Second Vatican Council. Who cares? Why is that germane? The Second Vatican Council produces a very small but very significant document called Nosher Ated, which literally means in our time. The point of the document is to turn around the Catholic Church's view of the Jews. Now, it's not a 180-degree turnaround. It's like the Roman Catholic Church suddenly becomes pro-Israel, anything remotely resembling that. However, what it does say is that the Jews today are not culpable, are not responsible for killing Jesus. The Jews are our elder brother. Anti-Semitism is a sin which the Roman Catholic Church rejects. The portrayal of the Jews in Roman Catholic liturgy, for example, Good Friday. So you're probably, when you think of Good Friday, you're thinking of, well, we're getting ready for Shabbos. Well, no, that's not what they mean. Good
Friday, getting ready for Shabbos, and you have a good kiddush before.
The child, I can smell the soup, honey. It's great. The challahs are hot. I'm going to davening. That's not what Good Friday. Good Friday, when I was a child, I'm a little older than you. When I was a kid, Good Friday in Brooklyn, you didn't walk around non-Jewish neighborhoods because there was a time there was a lot of anti-Semitism. This was also the case in Europe and so on. It was a day, according to their tradition, Jesus was crucified. It means the following Sunday is Easter, and the Jews killed Jesus. And in the Good Friday liturgy, the Jews are referred to as the perfidious Jews, as the treacherous Jews. So that liturgy is now removed by the church. The point is that the Roman Catholics did not accept it. They consider this complete apostasy. And therefore they reject the current Pope, and they reject Pope John the 23rd. They reject the Second Vatican Council. And they only believe that Pius XII was the last of the legitimate popes. And therefore they hold, the technical term is, translate means the seat, or the seat is empty, means that the throne of Peter is vacant.
Okay, so what he's trying to say here for everybody that's not Jewish is that for hundreds and hundreds of years on Good Friday, priests across the world blamed the Jews, called them out, said, you are treacherous people, you crucified Jesus. And Jewish people were scared to walk around parts of America on Good Friday through Easter Sunday because of this. Well, and this Pope decides to remove that phrasing from the Catholic Church. When he does, these people call it apostasy. We have been discussing the evangelical church in America. The Protestant church is going through an apostasy right now. They called it apostasy to remove this wording and accept the Jewish people and stop blaming them for the blood of Christ. Well, there were some very cultish-like people that had a problem with that, and this is what happened.
And this iteration, this is Mel Gibson's type of Roman Catholicism. So this iteration of Roman Catholicism, of course, intersects with anti-Semitism, conspiracy theories about Jews and so on. It doesn't mean every single person who believes this is an anti-Semite, but this is a natural petri dish which Jew hatred could metastasize. Now, a point that's very intriguing here. Everyone missed this, and I know for the viewers, even for Christian viewers, will not understand the ramifications of all this. So she believed in Reformed theology. It's not just Protestantism, but it's a Calvinism. Calvin was fiercely anti-Roman Catholic. He held that the Pope was the Antichrist. So
Candace Owens, being raised Christian conservative in the Calvinistic corner of it, was raised up to believe the Pope was the Antichrist. But then she falls in love, if you want to call it that, after 18 days, with George Former, who is not just Catholic, but SSPX. It is, in fact, they were excommunicated and still are partially excommunicated from the Catholic Church.
Go from Reformed theology to Roman Catholicism, and not just any kind of Roman Catholicism, but the most conservative type of Mel Gibson's Roman Catholicism is mind-blowing, and that's exactly when she did it. One other point that should be made, and that is her husband, George, comes from a rather prestigious family, and her father-in-law, Michael Farmer, he's a lord. He's a person very distinguished, and he's a conservative evangelical Christian, a member of the Anglican Church, and he's very pro-Israel. So this is very intriguing. Her husband was raised in the Anglican Church. He converts to this very conservative Roman Catholicism. His father is a Protestant evangelical Christian, and the evangelical church is divided. I know this is complicated for you, but the Church of England is divided between the left-wing liberals and the right-wing conservatives. The right-wing conservatives tend to be very pro-Israel. So his father, who is an evangelical Christian, is very pro-Israel. George is not, and George hangs out with people like Taylor Marshall, all these ultra-conservative traditionalists. And when Candace did this, again, I don't watch her. This is not my thing. My thing is religion. When she went from Reformed theology to his Roman Catholicism, I mean, she joined her husband, I knew immediately this was a nightmare. And now all these ideas, some of them are very weird, are emerging from her.
Yeah, I mean, some of those weird ideas include the Jews being behind 9/11, the Jews assassinating John F. Kennedy,
Right.
Just blood libel after blood libel.
Right. So I just should explain one thing. I want the viewers to understand this, that all of these, we call them all these wonderful things that are being expressed, they have a little bit of truth to them. You know, any lie, and it's important, because we're going to talk about things that are not being said rather than regurgitate everything that's out there. Every lie that gains traction has a scintilla of truth to it. Yep. So JFK's father was a big anti-Semite, and he himself did want to stop Israel's nuclear program. He was thoroughly committed to it. When he was assassinated, his vice president that he didn't care for, LBJ, happened to be someone who was rather pro-Israel. And there's theological reasons for that as well. I mean,
I know, but what's the truth? I mean, there's no truth to the fact that
the truth is that Israel benefited from it.
Yeah, but I mean, what she said is that Israel was responsible for it.
Oh, exactly. That means what happens is there's this little thing that Israel, it's just an intersection. What happens is JFK is killed. JFK was set to stop Israel's nuclear program. Look, when she talks about the USS Liberty that was attacked by Israeli forces, so that was a tragic case in the beginning of the Six-Day War of friendly fire. Look, we have every week we have Israeli soldiers that are killed in friendly fire in Gaza. It happened in the United States. Cops in firefights shoot other cops, and sometimes they get killed. That doesn't mean cops are trying to kill cops, right?
Right.
So the USS Liberty was a tragic case of mistaken identification during the war, and that stuff happens. It happens now almost daily in Gaza. It's a tragedy. A lot of Israeli soldiers are shot by other soldiers. Doesn't mean they're trying to kill each other. Right. So what the
So I'm going to fast forward it because I know your time is precious, but I want you to hear what he says about the perfect storm.
Is very pro-Israel, and his son George, who's Candace's husband, is totally the other way, and she embraced the Catholicism of her husband. That's what's critical, not of a father-in-law.
Interesting. So, I mean, the fact that Candace Owens has these beliefs, I mean, she kind of, when she's talking nowadays, she seems unhinged. These are things that probably led to her dismissal from the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, that company over there. Should us Jews here even care about what she's saying, or it's just someone who seemingly is going down I don't say a nervous breakdown, but she's just going somewhere and it doesn't really affect us all too much? Or should we be worried that no, her words are creating a whole new generation of people who are believing blood libels?
So she's an influencer, and she has enormous effect on conservatives in the United States. And I think it's extremely disconcerting, and people are very troubled by her. Roman Catholics are very troubled by her. Conservatives are very troubled by her. People might want to say it openly, but they're very worried about her because she seems, some of the things she's saying, like Brandeis, Supreme Court Justice, being somehow a person who was a follower of Jacob Frank. These are this is on the extreme, very extreme. These are very odd things to say, but Americans should be very concerned. And in my view, American Jewry has to be very worried when there's a perfect storm, and you don't have a perfect storm yet. The perfect storm would have to be an economic breakdown in the United States. So if you have a complete economic collapse, like I'm a little older than you, I remember when...
This video was made a year ago, 1 year ago. Where have we heard the terminology, the perfect storm? Yes, the Charlie Kirk assassination. Does this mean that we're fixing to have a full and utter economic breakdown? Because personally, I think evangelical Christians need to sincerely be concerned. I think that the Jewish people, if you're Jewish, I think you need to go back to Israel. I said this a while back. It made some people upset. I'm totally okay with that. Nobody pays my bills but God. So I'm going to speak my truth always. There's a second Holocaust coming. There's a second Holocaust coming. You need to hear this.
My last question, do you see any way that this election happens, Joel? I know, politics is not necessarily where you focus, but do you see any intersection between what we've been discussing and this current election?
Yeah, of course. So there is, what's going to happen in November. The United States is divided right down the middle, right? Everybody understands how important the swing states are. And we're only talking about a few percent in one direction or the other. That's it. So essentially, the United States is completely divided. And this is not rocket science that half of the country is not going to accept what occurs in the elections. And everything really is at stake. And it is deeply disconcerting. We were seeing Trump ascending, especially after the assassination attempt. Then you see, the DNC just had is having their whole thing going on in Chicago. So obviously their numbers are going up. You have to really watch the last 2 weeks of, where things are going. But absolutely, because you have the extreme left in the United States that intersects with other groups that they shouldn't be intersecting with. There's no reason in the world why a devout conservative Muslim in Dearborn, Michigan would vote for the Democratic Party that supports abortion and gay rights. You and I are not getting into that, but it's just very simple that...
Well, who else are they supposed to vote for?
Well, no, they would, logically, if it was just religion, you see, if there was no intersection here, so they would certainly vote for the more conservative. Islam is a very conservative religion. But we're seeing an intersection because there's a storm brewing. Absolutely. So,
but we see that in the streets of Chicago right now, even outside of the actual DNC. Right. It's just pure anti-Semitism that's going on. Right. And maybe some stations are covering it, but some are not. And it's not being spoken about. The RNC was just a couple months ago, and that didn't happen, but you're seeing the DNC, there's Palestinian flags, there's pro-Hamas flags, there's pure anti-Semitism. Is that interwoven into the Democratic Party?
Right, because it's an intersection. The intersection is the hard left has an aversion towards the state of Israel, which portrays Israel as the oppressor and the Palestinians as the victims. So that intersection, which is in the hard left. I don't mean people who are to the left of center, but once you get and that is right now a core constituency for the Democratic Party. In the Republican Party, of course, evangelicals, that's the largest voting bloc in the United States. 1 out of every 5 Americans is an evangelical Christian. So about like 75 million people. The largest Protestant denomination in America is the Southern Baptist Convention. So these people are staunchly pro-Israel, and they're very conservative. Now, logically, if the religious issue was the only thing at play, so Muslims are conservative in their theology on issues of gay rights, abortion, trans, all those issues. We're not getting into that, but Islam is definitely not pro-LGBT. They're not for that. But the intersection, the storm is coming together where people are partnering who ordinarily would have absolutely nothing in common. I mean, logically, I mean, here in Israel, you have gay pride parades and, they're free. If you go anywhere I am, I'm in Jerusalem, right? If I go to any of the Muslim countries that surround Israel, there's no gay rights. So logically, they should, but there's an overriding issue that's very disconcerting, and I think people have to really take that to heart, and that's why I have to be very careful. She's not the only conservative commentator out there that doesn't really have a heart for Israel. The other thing is Ukraine and Putin.
All right, so all of this is going to be in the description of the video. Friends and family, what he said blew me away. Because I've known this and I've sat back and I'm like, God, why? Out of all, it's mind blowing to me that supposed Christians don't understand that your Holy Bible is written for the Jewish people in the Old Testament and then for the Gentile and the Jew in the New Testament, that tribulation is solely to bring the Jewish people in Israel back under and back to you. I serve the God of Israel. If you are Christian, that is who your God is. The God of Israel, the Jewish people, you serve the same God. So turning against Israel, and don't tell me, do not. I'm beyond sick of that. We're just asking questions. You don't even realize what's been done to you. They have taken the biggest block of voters in America and split us in two. So some of you would legitimately not vote for a conservative candidate based on the question of Israel. And that's exactly what they want you to do. That is exactly what Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and others like them have done. You have now left it all open to Muslims like Mondani in New York City. That is their game, and you can't even see it because you have bought into the lies. You have let yourself sit there and listen to hours and hours and hours of lies about the Jewish people. This one won't take but a second, but you better understand what he says this time. This is how the SSPX, which is the religion Candace Owens practices, began.
January 25th, there are two people that meet each other for the first and the last time, and that's Herzl. Herzl, an important early Zionist figure, meets Pope Pius X. The hope that Pius X might recommend, support the founding of a Jewish state. It was really, I think it was a fool's errand, as most do, but Pius X's response, Pius X was not a fan of the Jews at all. And when Herzl asked Pius X, for his endorsement of a Jewish state, Pius X replied that not only do we not support a Jewish state, but we will, if you did not recognize our Savior, we are not going to recognize your state. He told Herzl, you made a terrible mistake by not converting to Christianity. Moreover, he said, well, I can't stop you Jews from coming to Palestine and coming to Jerusalem, but be sure to know that our priests will be in Jerusalem waiting for you to baptize you when you came. Herzl dies in that year. So, as it turns out, the most virulent anti-Israel Roman Catholics look to Pius X as a hero. And in fact, the iteration of Roman Catholicism that Candace Owens belongs to, her husband George Farmer belongs to, Marshall Taylor belongs to, Mel Gibson belongs to. They are supporters of a society of the society of Saint Pius X. It's SSPX Roman Catholics. SSPX Roman Catholics all reject the Second Vatican Council that was commissioned by Pope John the 23rd. He was the Pope following the death of Pius XII. Pius XII died on October 9th of 1958. Pius XII served as Pope for 19 years. He was instrumental in forging an alliance between the Vatican and the Third Reich. He is appropriately called Hitler's Pope. The church was really, his death was really quite striking. I know I'm going off thing, but so he dies on October 9th, 1958. And the newspapers on October 11th, his body was being viewed by thousands of people. Imagine, Pope is on display for viewing. And the headlines were on that day that Pope Pius XII's body exploded. He had really Pope Pius XII's body just blew up, essentially. Now, I think the headlines overstated it, but they didn't properly embalm him, and Akash Baruch Hu gave him quite a send-off of his joyness. And because he was wrapped up, and it was unseasonably warm in October of 1958. I think the temperature on October 11th was something along 78 degrees, which is unseasonably warm. And his chest burst open, his intestines just blew out. And it was so gross that his Swiss guards, many of them fainted on the spot. The smell was grotesque. And imagine the thousands of people there observing this spectacle. His fingers fell off, his nose fell off. And the Vatican had to actually rotate Swiss guards by 15 minutes because people couldn't even be there. We find in the Bible sometimes that very wicked people like Jezebel have a horrible, not just death, but what happens to the body following.
So let me reiterate this. Pope Pius, Hitler's Pope, who joined with the Third Reich, helped to bring out thousands of Hitler's high-ranking military officers and scientists all over the world, South America, America, Europe. They hid them in Rome, right? This Pope, when he dies, they say it's because they embalmed him wrong and that it was seasonably hot. But God will not be mocked. This man's nose fell off, his fingers fell off, his chest fell up, his intestines burst out of his embalmed body. It was so bad. People were fainting from the stench. Yeah, he got exactly what he deserved. I can only imagine what his eternal soul will go through.
Back to our topic, the Vatican recognized that it had a very serious problem on its hands, a scandal. The scandal was that Pius XII collaborated with the Nazis. It was not just silent, but he was he did everything he could to not cast aspersion on the Third Reich and for its crimes against the Jews, which he was able to observe the Gestapo coming into Rome. So they needed to clean up the mess. The Vatican does that very well. In that they brought in a pope who was philo-Semitic, who really liked Jews. That was John the 23rd, frequently called the Papa Bueno, the good pope. And he then formed the Second Vatican Council. And Nostra Aetate, the most notable document of that is that the Jews are not cult wolf for killing Jesus. It does not reject replacement theology, but it goes a long way to improve Jewish-Christian relations. The Catholics who hated that, and a lot did, rejected the Second Vatican Council. They're SSPX Roman Catholics. Many of the Catholics that you know, they're virulently anti-Semitic, belong to that. Now, you can't join SSPX. It's not like you can join it. That organization, that society, is reserved exclusively for male clergy, but you can support it. So that's what replacement theology is. It means that the church is a new Israel. Just one other caveat, Augustine was faced with a number of conundrums in his life when he's writing early 5th century, is why is God preserving the Jews? I mean, the Jews are still here. Why haven't they disappeared? Augustine surmises that God has preserved the Jews to live in a degraded state as a witness, to bear witness to the world of what happens to a nation that not only rejects Jesus but kills them, and therefore they are to live but in a degraded state and not kill them, molest them, leave them in a poor condition. Absolutely, that's what replacement theology is. And finally, just Andrew, there are Christians who are dispensationalists that reject that completely and view Romans chapter 11 and specifically verse 26, where he's just quoting Isaiah 59, but that's not germane, that all of Israel be saved, and that ultimately God will not revoke the promises he made. See Romans 11, verse 27 and 28 and 29. Those are critical verses that replacement theology Christians hold to, but the vast majority of churches, God is done with the Jews.
And he's not wrong. I've never seen it like this in my entire life. I have never seen the misquoting of Bible verses, the taking out of context of one or two verses to condemn the Jewish people. Whether you subscribe or unsubscribe, you will never change what I know from my Bible and from the Holy Spirit. I am grafted into the tree of the Jewish people. I am not a replacement tree. The God of Israel is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Any Christian that believes that you have taken the place of the Jews, it is a spirit of jealousy. It is a spirit of antichrist, because Jesus hates the Jews, because the whole Old Testament is nothing but Jewish people moving through the world and walking in the power of their God. Jesus was a Jew. You don't replace his genealogy. You don't replace his ethnicity. He's not a white man. Jesus is not a black man. He was a Jewish man. To believe anything else is fallacy straight from hell. And I firmly believe, and I never really understood where it says, people say, I thought I knew you, Jesus. I knew you. I cast out demons and I did this. Faith can mimic a lot of things. But Jesus says, I never knew you. Because you will not accept him for who he is. You, in your jealousy and in your sin, feel like you are better than the Jews. It is heartbreaking to me. It truly is, you guys. It truly is, because when Jesus comes back, when the tribulation happens, that is to reconcile the Jewish people and Israel back to God. That's why Christians aren't here for it, because it's going to be horrific. No, we're not somewhere in the middle of tribulation. No, we're not in Satan's little season. Your lack of understanding of biblical history, of biblical timelines, is mind-blowing to me. When I see people who don't understand the purpose of the red heifer, it's not a sacrifice for sins. The red heifer has to be sacrificed to get the ashes from the red heifer to purify the priest, the line of Aaron, to then go into the Holy of Holies when they rebuild the third temple where the Antichrist is going to sit. That is the purpose of the red heifer. It's got nothing to do with sin. Yet, I get this from Christians. We don't need a red heifer. We had Jesus, the blood, the blood. Where's your understanding of end time, family and friends? You're not going to get it off YouTube and Candace Owens. She is fully under the power of hate. The elephant in the room is that she has always been placed where she is to do just what she's doing. I love you. If I did not love you guys, I would not waste my time because I know my Bible. I'm not double-minded. I'm not pushed here and there and here with everybody's different theologies. And no, I have a pastor. I go to church. I study my Bible. But yet all I keep hearing is, we don't need church. We don't need this. Well, you do. You really do. Because the deception is big, big. You guys be blessed. Have an amazing weekend.